let's start off with a very simple, basic fact. The human brain is a computer. It's not like a computer. It's actually a far better computer than humans have ever created. But it is a computer and still has the same functions and basic operation procedures to it. When the old days when we would buy a computer, you'd go home and you push start and it boots up. And then I say, okay, let's do something. You go, oh, no, I can't do anything. I go, well, you got a brand new computer. The point is, no, first you have to put programs in the computer, and then you can access the computer via the keyboard, which is the creative part of the computer. The brain of a human has two parts to it. We say the mind, everybody goes, the mind, like there's one mind. I go, well, that's the problem right away. There are two minds, they're interdependent, and they have totally different functions. The latest evolution of the mind is right behind your forehead. It's called the conscious mind. It's the prefrontal cortex, part of the brain lobe right back here. That's the seat of consciousness. That's the seat of your spirituality, in fact. And I said, well, 90% of the brain back here is called the subconscious mind. I go, okay, so what's the difference? The conscious mind is creative. The subconscious mind is programs, just habits, hard drive, okay? Now, the issue about this is that with the conscious mind, we can be creative and do everything we want. But the conscious mind does two things, and one of them is look out your eyes like the windshield of a vehicle, and with wishes and desires, the conscious mind will take us on the road to where we want to go. But the conscious mind can think. I go, so what's the problem? I go, well, thinking is not looking out. Thinking is looking in. So the moment you start thinking, your conscious mind's not paying attention to the world outside here. I go, well, yeah, but what if you're driving the car and you start thinking? I go, well, almost everybody does it anyway. I go, it's kind of interesting because at some point you get so caught up in your head thinking, and then you look out the windshield and realize you haven't paid attention to the road for the last number of minutes, but hey, you're still on the road. Everything seems to be running okay. And I go, no problem, because the subconscious is autopilot. In other words, when the conscious mind is busy, the subconscious programs take over. You know how to drive a car, it's a program. Things that you know how to do, walk, talk, drive the car, do your job, these become habits. Habits are no thinking. Habits are just push the button, play the program. So the idea about that is, well, that's really cool because that makes our life a lot easier than trying to focus on everything in the world when you can just push the button. You can walk without thinking about walking, okay? So there's a great benefit to the subconscious. The problem that comes up with the subconscious is if you're thinking, you're not looking out the window, you're not paying attention to what's going on, and the subconscious steps in and takes over. And I go, well, what's the point? I go, well, we don't see our subconscious programs. We don't see them because they're playing while we're thinking. And I go, well, what's the problem? I go, well, 60% or more of the programs are disempowering, self-sabotaging, or limiting beliefs. So I go, well, what does that mean? I go, the moment you start thinking, you start playing the program. But if you have a dysfunctional program, do you see it? I go, no, because it's automatic. The problem is everybody else sees it. And they're going to respond to your program. They're not responding to your conscious mind. They're responding to the habits you acquired. So the problem about that is we're unaware, and here's the number, 95% of the day is the average amount of thinking a person is involved with, which then translates simply to 95% of the day you're running your life with programs that you don't even see. But it becomes problematic because when things aren't working, the tendency of an individual is, well, I have great wishes to be happy, successful, loving, and to have all these things. And if it's not working, there's a tendency then to consider yourself the victim and then blame everything around you as why your life's not running right. And the fact was, no, you were the one that was running the program. They were just responding. So it says, wait, we are responsible for the life we are living. And the issue about that is, well, what are your programs? Because they're running your life. I go, you don't know what your basic programs are. I go, why? Because the programming of the subconscious started, 3 months before you were born. And it's continuous for 7 years. your brain in that 7-year period is running at a lower vibration when you put wires on a person's head, EEG. The vibration is called theta, which is just below consciousness. Consciousness is a higher vibe, alpha, and then even higher, beta and gamma. You're running at theta. And I go, well, theta is imagination. I go, yeah, that's what characterizes kids. They live in the real world, the imaginary world at the same time. I always talk about, that great tea party. You pour nothing into the cup, you drink nothing, and that was the best tea you ever had in your life. Or a child riding on a broom, because in the child's mind, theta is imagination. The broom is a horse. I mean, to the kid, it really is. So if the mother says, give me the broom, the child's like not understanding what she's talking about because it's no longer a broom in that state of a child. It's now really a horse in their imagination. The problem? Theta is hypnosis. And I go, oh, so you're in a state of hypnosis for almost 7 years. I go, why? Well, the answer is simple. And he goes, how many rules does it take to be a member of a family? How many rules does it take to be a member of a community? Thousands. I said, well, how are you going to teach an infant? They can't read a book. They can't sit in a classroom. So nature took care of it. Nature said, first 7 years, hypnosis, download, observe those around you, your mother, your father, your siblings, your community. In observing them, you're actually downloading behavior, but other people's behavior. So it becomes interesting is because we get the foundation of the rules by observing others. Now, problem is, if the people you're observing are not living in harmony, but then by definition, you've downloaded disharmony as well. And so all of a sudden it says, well, these are the programs. I go, yeah, 95% of the day, that's where your life is coming from. Do you know these programs? So I ask people, well, tell me what program you got before you were born. Well, obviously, I don't know. Well, wait, you were programmed the whole year from 0 to 1. What programs did you get? No, from 1 to 2, another whole year. I don't know those programs. I go, the biggest problem is most of the fundamental programs that operate our life were downloaded before we were conscious, and we have no awareness of what those programs are. But we're running them 95% of the day. So I stand back and go, wait a minute. Your life is a printout of your programs. So the idea is this. All you have to do is right now is just look at your life and go, the things you like that come into your life, well, they come in because you have programs to acknowledge those things. But this is the one. The things that you desire and you want, but you struggle, you work hard, you put a lot of effort into it. I'm sweating over it. I'm going to make this happen. I'm working really hard to make it happen. I go, why are you working so hard? And the answer is inevitably that destination you're seeking, that destination is not supported by your program. And then you're trying to override the program. Very, very difficult to do. And so basically it says, well, wait, we are programmed. I go, yep, that's the foundation of the matrix. All of us are programmed. We're running these programs 95% of the time. We do not see these programs. We only see the consequence of these programs. So if you don't mind, I'll use an example that I've been using since 1980 because there's not a better one yet, and that is you have a friend and you know your friend's behavior and you happen to know your friend's parent. And then one day you see your friend has the same behavior as their parent, which gets you, hey, Bill, you're just like your dad. Back away from Bill, because I know exactly what Bill's going to say, and you know it if you've ever said it. And Bill's going to say, how can you compare me to my dad? I'm nothing like my dad. But everybody else sees that Bill's like his dad. Who's the one that doesn't see it? Bill. I go, why not? Because when he's playing the programs he downloaded from his dad, he's the one that doesn't see it. Everybody else sees it. So all of a sudden it says, your life is not being controlled by your wishes and desires while you're running the program. And you run the program 95% of the day because that's the amount of time you're thinking. So are you creating the life you want? I go, not necessarily at all. As a matter of fact, you're creating the life you've been programmed to create. A medical example, great one. And hopefully I'll probably blow some people's minds with this one. There's not one gene that causes cancer. There's no gene, if I have this gene, I get cancer. That's not true. all the so-called oncogenes, cancer genes, based on percentages. A certain percentage of people with this gene will have, the cancer. Well, the problem is, let's say in the BRCA, the breast cancer gene, which obviously women are that really takes their mind. They find out they have the breast cancer gene. And I say, well, what's going to happen? I said, well, the picture in their mind is the fear. And I go, well, that's where the problem comes from. It's the fear that will generate the cancer, not the gene. So half the women that carry the gene never get the cancer. So that's an important point. Possession of the gene didn't mean you got cancer. I said, well, where does it come from? Well, they followed the fate of kids who were adopted into families where there's cancer running in the family. And it turns out the adopted child will get that family cancer just like a natural sibling. But the adopted child came from totally different genetics. The cancer is a downloading of dysfunctional behavior that is passed from generation to generation to generation. And so it's dysfunctional behavior that's inherited, not the genes. And that's very powerful, because if a person really understands this, it says, well, then wait, I'm not, going to get the cancer because a gene gave me the cancer. I did it because of my consciousness. I go, oh, well, that's something you control. So we go from the idea of victim of genetics into the new science, epigenetics, which reveals it's your consciousness that's controlling these genes. And I go, so what's the difference? The genetic story, you're a victim. When it turns out that consciousness is creating life, then you have the option to be the master, because you're the one that can change your consciousness and then empower your life. So we're moving out into another world. And this other world says, as the Matrix says, we have to get out of these programs. And these are the programs of dysfunction that are being passed from generation, from culture to culture, up and down the line. We're facing this evolutionary story right now because we're not sustainable. And this is the wake-up call for human civilization. Wake up, take your power back, because with your consciousness, you can have heaven on earth for as long as you live. Sounds good. I gave a lecture in Tel Aviv at the University of Tel Aviv in Israel, and we bussed in about 300 plus Palestinians from the West Bank that never were there in Israel at all. And I can remember this big auditorium, and all the Israelis were on this side over here, and then the Palestinians were over here, and of course they were not communicating kind of people. And I started to give them the science of how programming during child development is the issue. And they were like, yeah, nodding, paying attention. Then I put up a slide, and it was black screen, but it said on the top, the problem. And when I pushed the button, two pictures came up side by side. One of them was Israeli kids playing with machine guns. The other picture was Palestinian kids dressed in military uniforms carrying rifles. And I said, look what you're programming these kids. They're going to hate each other. They don't even know each other. And you've been programming this. And I said, this is where your problem is. You've been passing this program generation, and that's why this Mideast issue has been going on so long, because it was passed down to the kids before they were old enough to know what the hell was going on, okay? And then next slide was the solution, black screen, two pictures come up, and it was an Israeli and a Palestinian boys walking down the street with arms around each other, and the other picture was Palestinian and Israeli girl playing together and having a good time. I said, these kids will never fight each other. And all I remember how clearly it was, there was a pause where people stopped, and it was so dead silent, and it was almost like a vacuum. You could hear a pin drop. It dawned on them for the first time in their lives, my God, you're propagating this hatred against each other with kids who don't even know each other, and you just programmed them. And I'll never forget it, because it was like a moment of awakening. And it was so cool, because at the end of that program, out in the foyer, there was a lot of refreshments, and there were whirling dervishes and music. And the next thing you know, they're they were all talking to each other, the Palestinians and the Israelis, and they were sharing social experience together. But it happened after Wake Up. And it was amazing to see that actually happen. It's the programming that takes us on the wrong path. And you put the right programming in, there's no violence anymore. This violence is learned. It's not part of the genetics of an organism.